Courtney.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello all.
Let's see, we're missing one person. Ah, nope, just came on.
We lost him. Who's in the background?
Tony, I think you need to mute.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah, just fine. All right, thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. It's nice that you could all join us and participate, especially on a Friday afternoon and a beautiful day. Just a little bit of background on this. So Monday night, our city council had a discussion item in which we talked about an aid package for that we can use for businesses, residents, and so forth. And they created a subcommittee, which is you guys. And a couple of things that you just need to know as we go forward. This is a public meeting. It is being televised on Channel 4. It is also available to be streamed. It's not one that is taking public comment, but it is being recorded. Now, on Zoom, for those of you who are familiar with it, there is a chat feature. We have learned from this process that in the recording, that gets picked up as well, which is good because it needs to be. Any public meeting, even the notes that you take, the chat back and forth becomes a public record. So note that this is being recorded. If you're using the chat, that also goes in as part of the record of this meeting. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is it's called roll. This is pretty easy because I can see you're all there. But I'm just going to start. Ron Chandler. Ed, why don't you go next?
Ed Drystad.
Lori Arsatorres.
Rick Mark. Judy's muted.
Riley Hoagland.
Dave Price.
Judy Cass.
Debbie Bridges.
Courtney Liberato. Kathy Steer, City Recorder.
Okay, thanks everybody.
I don't see Debbie.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have a camera on my computer, and I'm actually perfectly happy with that.
Just camera shy.
I am.
So let me tell you, first of all, a little bit background information on city funding and what we discussed a little bit in our city council meeting, and then where we go from there. You have received several emails, copies of emails. They came from Councilors Casper, Councilor Hinton, Councilor Mark, Marcy Baker, and then also my council communication that was part of last Monday's city council meeting. In all of those, if there were multiple documents from one group, I combined them into one PDF so that you would have them and have those available. A little bit about kind of where the city is in all of this. First of all, financially, the city is getting hit to the tunes of probably about $700,000 a month. The areas where we're seeing that the most are in the transient room tax. That will affect Explore Lincoln City, police, parks, and streets primarily. Those are the groups that get hit a little bit in community center. That is to the tune of about $635,000 a month. We're losing, of course, all of our community center revenue, which is about $35,000 a month. And then there's various miscellaneous ones in building permit fees that are down and other areas. The other two areas where we don't know exactly how much we're going to be hit, but we know we are, is in the water and sewer services. Where all of the water and sewer billing charges are based on water usage, and we're seeing that that usage down by about 45%. So for example, we have each bill is separated between two charges. In the water, you have a base amount that you pay no matter how much water you use, and then you have an amount that you pay if you're over a certain amount of water usage. The average for the month of May and June is $188,000 in the water base amount that we will receive. But the water volume amount is $120,000, and I'm not certain exactly how much of that will come in versus how much we'll lose. So there's the impact that we're seeing in both those areas. Another important thing to understand in this process is that the city's finances are made up of separate individual funds, and some of those funds can be used for multiple purposes. Others are very restricted and can only be used for certain purposes. The one that is most restricted is actually the transient room tax funding. The use of those are spelled out by the city charter and state law, and EDS, which gets about 50% of the transient room tax funds, is probably the most restrictive in that it has to be used for tourism-related activities. Okay. A good example of a tourist and non-tourist related funds for EDS is that ED would not be able to simply give a business money if it's not tourist related. However, he could promote that same business to tourists when they come into town. And so it's a little bit of a subtle distinction, but it's a very important distinction on how we can use those funds. So if Ron's Widgets is not a tourist-related business, he could not give me the funds from transient room tax. However, he may be able to promote Ron's Widgets to the tourist or to the population of Portland to come down and come to my widget business. So it's a little bit subtle, but it's an important distinction, especially as we go forward and try to discuss where we go from here. Now, the council, as I mentioned, created this, you guys, a subcommittee, and they kind of focused in on two areas, but not exclusively on two areas. The first area is in the area of water and sewer billing. That's not necessarily the focus of you guys, but I wanted to bring it up because they are somewhat related, especially financially. One will affect the other, but that is to give some sort of, the best way I can describe it is a water and sewer holiday, where the water sewer bills are essentially forgiven. We already, in essence, have created a deferred program because we are not shutting anybody off, which means their bill will still be due at the end of whatever, and then we'll work with the businesses and the residents in spreading out the repayment of that. So that is in part already in place. The second part that the City Council discussed and asked the staff to bring back some recommendations would be for simply waiving those fees and a formula whereby we would do that. We were looking probably at about $500,000 to be able to do that. The second area where they looked and are asking for your recommendations is on how we can specifically help businesses. And the discussion seemed to center a lot around a program that Ed had already started on a small scale, which was to buy goods and services that he could then use as promotions at a later date when the economy is back up and running again, to do, and it would do two things. That would, first of all, infuse some cash into the economy locally immediately as he's purchasing goods and services, but then it also creates the multiplier effect, or the leveraging effect, that when people come back in to redeem whatever they have received or whatever he has promoted, then there's always well, in economics terms, it's a multiplier effect. It's you bring in $1 and people spend it on more than just that dollar type of a thing. They go to a hotel, they also visit the restaurants, they visit gift shops, they visit hair salons, or whatever it may be. So that's kind of where the city council had centered a lot of the discussion on as far as the businesses. Councilor Casper has been working diligently, has some other ideas that she has been working on. And the other thing that they discussed was a means test in some way. So, for example, I'll use the water bill as the best example. I should not be forgiven of my water payment because I'm still, fortunately, gainfully employed, still bringing in an income. However, if somebody was unemployed, they would then be eligible. So some sort of a means test in both these cases could simply apply. Now, as I mentioned, Ed's program has been on a small scale, $10,000 to $20,000. We've been looking at beefing that up to more of around about $500,000. So before I just kind of turn it over to the brainstorming idea, or brainstorming part of this, Ed, I wanted you to give you just a few minutes to talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing.
Okay, as Ron pointed out, the dollars we have to work with have strings attached. You know, I need to be able to justify those as things being spent on tourism promotion. You know, the reason we look at gift cards and vouchers and that type of thing were that would allow us to buy things from local businesses, put money into the town right away, infuse cash, do all the things that I think we all want to do to support the businesses here in Lincoln City. I've heard a couple objections to that. I mean, there's a fear out there that we're going to buy $500,000 worth of stuff, and when we finally get out from underneath the COVID-19 crisis, all of a sudden the town's going to get swamped by people, and they're going to be handed in these vouchers, and nobody's going to make any money, and everybody's going to go out of business, and it's going to be horrible. And that's not the case at all. We sat down and figured out what we could go through. You know, part of what we want to do is to have some sweepstakes and contests and feel-good things right now, just to be a bright spot in people's lives, to give them a little taste of Lincoln City while they're stuck in their house and they can't come down here. If we fired up everything, if we got Facebook rolling, if we started doing Instagram promotions, if we branched that out into Twitter, you know, we could maybe give away $1,500 worth of stuff a week. You do the math, to burn through $500,000, it's going to take us 6 years. We're not going to flood the town with anything. If we put all this stuff out there, and the other thing too is nobody's going to get a voucher until it's time to come back. They'll get a letter saying, hey, you won, and when the coast is clear, you'll get your stuff in the mail. So we'll have the ability to meter some there too. The other thing is when somebody gets something for free and didn't pay for it, it doesn't have a lot of intrinsic value. You don't have that much skin in the game. Back in the old days when I worked at Busch Gardens, we used to give away comp tickets that were worth $50 a piece. We gave away 4 to a family of 4. It's a $200 item. 40% never came in through the front gate. So, you know, a lot of what these folks would be giving us vouchers for, if we use them all, it might be years from now before they're actually used. Probably 30–40% of them will never come back into town anyway. We would meter these out to where nobody would be too deep in the hole right off the bat. And, you know, we see it as a way to put a substantial amount of money in town and plant seeds for future visits. And when those folks come in, you look at the Travel Oregon Economic Impact Study. The average visiting party to the Oregon coast will spend $765 before they leave. We will never give away $765 worth of stuff to anybody. You know, the idea is that we give them enough things to where it's attractive, but maybe it doesn't have a hotel room, or maybe it doesn't have a lot of meals, or maybe it doesn't have this, that, or the other. Maybe they really want to blow a float, but the float thing wasn't in there. So we might give away a couple of $100 worth of stuff, but they're still going to spend that $765 when they get here. And the idea is that that rising tide will lift all boats. If we were able to just write checks, if we could just write checks for $500,000 and hand them out right now, I think would allow some businesses to get by for another month or two or whatever, then be back in the same boat and not have a whole lot to show for it. If we do what we're proposing to do here, we're planting the seeds for the future. We've got some things we can use to promote Lincoln City right now and keep it top of mind. We've got a trigger we can pull to get people into town right away when things get better. And we've got a nice arsenal of marketing tools. They're going to last us 5 or 6 years. Ron, am I rambling too much? Am I making...
Well, let me just interject something, because there's something you said that it sounds a little bit confusing. I need to make sure that it's clear on this. The idea that we have, if we're looking at $500,000, is that that's not spread out over a long period of time. We want to infuse that into the economy over the course of the next month. So
Right.
during the month of May,
Right.
It's not going to trickle a little bit. We want to infuse the entire amount that the city council approves into
Right.
the economy in a short period of time,
Right.
not a long period of time.
Right, but the gift cards and whatnot that are redeemed, those are not going to flood back into town. Those will be metered out over a very long time.
That's
That's the point I was trying to make.
okay. So a couple other things to just be aware of. There is in the packet that I gave to the city council some very specific requests that we will probably still be, a couple of them will probably still be recommending, no matter what you guys recommend. The city owns property in which we are the landlords. We've had requests to delay their rents. And we also have loans that have been made by our urban renewal agency for facade improvements. There's also been a request for delaying repayment of those, tacking on to the end of the loan, whatever is delayed. Those are two recommendations that we'll probably just take to the city council and say, as part of this package. Those are ones we have some very direct control over. The amounts that come into us are not as significant as other things that we would be looking at. So I also gave to you some information in answers to Councilor Mark's questions. We have 2,618 businesses in our community. Of those, 2,604 have 50 employees or less. We have, of our lodging industry, we have 777. 532 are vacation rental dwellings, 46 are motels/hotels, 180 are nightly condos. Those are individually owned by the people who own them. And then we have 19 bed and breakfasts. We have 74 restaurants. I believe I sent you a list of all of those. And then we also looked at the total number of businesses that have a location inside Lincoln City. What we were looking for, what are the brick and mortar businesses? And we had 803 in that I attached. That one's I'm not 100% confident in, because it was hard to manipulate our computer to say this is a brick and mortar type of business out of all of the occupational tax permits that we have. Okay, so this is a bit of a brainstorming session. So I guess the first thing I just have is, what questions do you have of us? And then let's just kind of jump into your thoughts on the council's directions that they've given to you.
Hi, yeah, so thanks. Part of the attraction to me, maybe this is obvious, with Ed's idea is that that's money that's sitting basically in the bank right now, right? That is available to us for that purpose. And we don't really have a better use of it. So that almost seems like I don't say no-brainer, but it seems like a logical use of that money. Compared to, I'm concerned about, while deferring the utility bills makes a lot of sense, and I would love to waive utility bills for those who qualify by whatever means test we come up with. That's money that has to still come out of city budget, because there's still expenses to pay for. So that's a loss to the city compared to the gift voucher idea, which is money that's waiting there to be used. So just wanted to be clear on that. We have to make up the loss to the utility bills somehow. And then that comes out of contingent funds that we have in hand, but it's going to draw that balance down, and we don't know how long we're going to have to do that. So that's a concern.
Other thoughts or questions? Councilor Hoagland?
Hi. So first of all, I think, some of the other cities have had, I think Seaside has a 10% TRT tax, and ours is at 9.5%. We have 8% and 1.5% of another. I would like to see or talk about raising it another 0.5%, and then using that, and then determining what we can do with that 0.5% throughout. Because I predict once everybody can leave, they're going to come here, and they're absolutely going to spend their time here, period. They wanted to do it 3 weeks ago, and they couldn't do it. And they're going to come here. So I think as a city, let's look at another 0.5% of TRT tax and seeing how we can use that information. Repayment plan, I think that's important. Ed, you talked about $765 per family. When was that? When was that information?
That was last updated in 2018, and that's the Travel Oregon Dean Runyon Economic Impact Study, and that number's for the Central Oregon Code.
Right. So I would love to see a more concise measurement for us here on the coast, specifically the Central Coast, and what data do we have? I remember Sandy Pfaff used to have numbers about what overnights versus day trippers would spend, families and stuff. So I'm sure there's data somewhere. I would really like to push you guys to find that.
That's all in the Dean Runyon study. That's where that comes from.
Okay. So having one for the Central Oregon is not the Oregon coast.
No.
I do.
The Central Oregon Coast. They have North Coast.
Central Oregon coast.
Yes. It's the closest, most concise measurement that we've been able to find. And I'll send you a link to the study. Riley, you can take a look at it. There's some great information in there.
Great. Also, go ahead.
I'm sorry, could I just throw in there? I believe changing a TRT tax rate requires a vote,
Sure.
a public vote of the people.
Of course. I'm well aware of that. No one has said anything about that, and I want to talk about that difference.
Okay.
The other thing is that this isn't Busch Gardens. Lincoln City isn't Busch Gardens, and doing comp tickets is not the same as destination travel and everything that is here to say. So I hear what you're saying, that whenever you worked at Busch Gardens was they didn't really care and 40% of them didn't do anything with it. We're not Busch Gardens. We're Lincoln City, and this is absolutely magic in paradise. And people come here, and they're still coming here. We got an email today that the guy said, I violated the ordinance and stayed anyway. So that's different. And then I'm curious as to why we're focusing on brick and mortar businesses. Is that something that it needs to be brick and mortar, or it's a Lincoln City business and it's negatively impacted by the COVID-19 crisis? And here's the following. I'm still fully supporting letting businesses say how they were negatively affected, how they contribute, and through this whole process, we are going to be able to say, hey, yes, this is negatively affecting, and here's money that way. And are we absolutely stuck on gift cards or gift certificates or something like that? Why does the money have to be on gift cards?
So, Riley, as far as the brick and mortar, I asked that question because Ron had said there were 2,000 some occupational tax permits in the city, and let me just finish that. So I just pointed out that, for example, me and my partner both have occupational tax permits. We have no employees. We're not paying rent. We operate some self-employed businesses that still have some income, and so we certainly don't need that kind of help. So I was trying to come up with a way to find a number of, if we can do a grant back to businesses, how much money are we actually looking at? And that was just trying to search for a way to find some sort of handle on that.
Absolutely. And for us to say we don't know for the city of Lincoln City to say we don't know how many brick and mortar businesses there are, and that's not a number that we can find, is unacceptable. Period. Ron didn't have that number. We need to have that number, period. Regardless of what it is, occupational tax permits or not, employees or not, how many businesses do we have in this city? And here's the breakdown. I know you said there's three different groups of businesses, but we have to say there's 1,000 businesses in this category, this category, and this category, period. For us to say we don't know, this is not the time to say we don't know.
Okay. And any other comments?
I have my hand up here.
Thank you. I forget how to use that.
I'll take it down. Just a comment to go back to the utilities. There was just a conference call this morning with the League of Oregon Cities. And just so we have a heads up, there's a bill coming out that's been in the works called the Coronavirus Community Relief Act. And this will be part of the flexibility that's being afforded to cities under 50,000 population. Currently, the CARES money is being given to cities that are 500,000 or more, and there are only 36 cities in the whole nation. So this bipartisan bill is being worked on so that communities like ours will be able to get funding. We have to apply for it. There's two different fundings. There's FEMA and there's Treasury money. And this money can be used for utilities such as water, broadband, and phone, business development, and housing. So I think that's something we should keep in mind in the future. In fact, even Greg Walden is on this specific committee, who's part of the bipartisan people working on it. So let's keep that in mind and apply for it. And there might be an opportunity for us to be reimbursed for these utilities. Just something to bear in mind.
Thank you. Okay,
Ron, this is Lori. When I hear from the businesses every day, and honestly, they need money now. There are so many expenses that they can't cover. They have no way of even trying to make any money. The loans that we thought were, the IDA loan and the PPP loan were essentially going to save the day. But, I haven't heard of anybody being funded on that. Dave said that today there's maybe a handful. So there really isn't any money coming in. So I would love to find a way to come up with an economic assistance grant, some kind of a grant that can help them through the next couple of months. There's also, when we get back open, there's, say for a restaurant, they've had to clear out their entire fridge, freezer. They have nothing in their building to get reopened with. So, there's going to be significant costs to getting back open. So I would love to see them, be able to make the decision of what they need to be able to get back open. Because honestly, a lot of them are thinking they will not.
Okay.
On that note, I am, first off, I'm thrilled that you're having this conversation. I'm thrilled that this committee was formed and that we're talking about these issues because it's critical. Lori mentioned that we heard from a couple of businesses, just a handful. There's a restaurant in Lincoln City that just got just south of $18,000 from a PPP loan. Another business of roughly the same size got 20. And so when I think about that, there's basically 5 businesses we were talking to today that call it just over $100,000. So if we took and this is enough to maybe survive and to maybe bring back some of their employees for a fixed period of time and hopefully get through this. So what that tells me is that the $500,000 we're talking about is amazing. But if we go peanut butter and jelly and spread it all over in very small amounts, I worry about the overall impact and the long-term ability if our goal is to keep some of these brick and mortar or the home-based businesses afloat. And I think much is going to come down to that decision matrix, because we would hate to think that those dollars are being invested in businesses that frankly don't need it, but they fell next on the list alphabetically or geographically or whatever. And I don't presume to know what that is, but I believe that a lot of this, the effectiveness of this tool or toolkit is going to come down to identifying need. And I guess I'll leave that thought there, but that concerns me a bit.
So let me jump off on that and kind of move us in a little bit of a direction with this question. Who should be eligible for funds? No matter how much it is, who should be, what businesses should be eligible for the funds?
Well, I would say, yeah, the businesses that really need them would take the time to apply for them. And if they knew that they could spend the money on what they needed, if it was open-ended enough, because not every business is going to need it. But, there's grants out there, and I've been trying every day to find resources for anybody and everybody, but there's at least 3 grants that I found that require you to have 3 or more employees. A lot of these businesses, it's just, the owners, mom and pop, or 1, maybe 2 employees. But a lot of them are falling under that criteria of 3 to 20 employees.
So let me run through a series of questions and to kind of narrow that down a little bit more. Should national chains be eligible?
No, not in my opinion, no.
I like that if you don't like it, like that if you do. Okay. Should businesses that have remained open be eligible?
Depending, a lot of them haven't even been making enough to keep the lights on. But they're trying. But they've had the extra expenses of the takeout containers. So it's not just that they're having a few outgoing meals a day, but they've added expenses to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
They could be thrown in there, but not exclusively.
let me ask a question there. And incidentally, we have had success at the bottom of the screen. The way I had this set up, underneath the pictures is a link called participants.
Yeah.
If I click on that, I get a list of names on the right, and there's a button at the bottom that says raise hand and lower hand. And that's sort of a way to help. So if you can see that, it's a way to keep a little, so we don't have to talk over each other all the time. I suspect there are businesses, I don't want to keep citing my partner and I, we just have a, pretty small thing going here that just keeps food on our table and keeps our mortgage paid, and we're fine with that. But I imagine we're not the only ones. There are probably other businesses, I don't know, accountants or, somebody who they're doing okay, and they don't need to. I hope they won't come to us for help if they don't really need it, but we don't really know that. And so I think we do need to find a way to limit. I mean, do we just want to do restaurants and hotels? Are there other? What about the antique shops? I mean, the retail shops for the storefront is kind of what I was thinking. Those and the restaurants and the hotels. Beyond that, and that is probably more than we can really give a significant amount of money to anyway. Beyond that, I don't know that we can really help anybody else.
Okay, so Council, I heard you say retail shops, lodging industry, and restaurants. Okay.
But lodging could, I don't think we need to include the big corporations in the lodging.
Well, I've already asked the question on chains. So
Okay.
I've already got that one. Okay, should it be limited based on the number of employees? Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor, I didn't see your hand there.
I'm short, but I'm not that short. I think you can almost look at two different groups and different needs. You have bigger, establishments, and you have smaller ones. Like Laura, you mentioned there were some that you had to have 3 to 20 employees. And I was focusing on 5 or less full-time employees, and just kind of like a one-time grant to be paid towards furthering experience for your employees. You'd have to have a physical storefront in Lincoln City. You'd have to have a business license. It would be a non-profit, and their loss would be because of the virus, and have to be 18 years or older. And if this wasn't a grant, you'd have so long to use it, and if it didn't come out that way, it would become a loan, and you could repay it over a year. And this would be used for your labor, rent, mortgages, anything, but not for savings. And you'd be required to have financial statements. When you apply, you'd have to say the purpose of it. It would be nice if you could, kind of retrain some of your employees. If you're going to start doing your business online, you could maybe send them over to Dave's small business school up there and gain some skills and use the money for that. That's kind of what my focus was on for the smaller, down-to-earth people who hold up all of us together daily.
Lori, let me ask you a question. I've heard this come up 2 or 3 different ways. How many strings? Now, I don't mean who's eligible. I mean, once you get it, how is it spent? How many strings and what kind of strings should they be?
Well, I think things like operating costs, rent, mortgage, ongoing insurance costs, the cost of doing business, additional costs to getting back open, maybe, and we could vet the ones that have gotten the other federal loans. If they do, I don't think they really need to apply for both, but maybe it's if they didn't qualify for the PPP loan or the EIDL loan. So, there's different ways we could go with it, but I would like to leave it open-ended enough that it actually was able to be spent on what they needed.
Okay.
I understand that the EIDL loan has run out of money.
Yeah, they both have.
Same thing. Okay.
I've heard some concern voiced that I think is worth pondering, just to throw this out there, that if it becomes essentially a lump sum payment that, especially if it's a grant and not a loan, that the business pays their back rent, because right now we're in a place where commercial rent is essentially not forgiven. You can't evict anyone, but you can still rack up that amount due over the course of 3 months. And in Lincoln City, that might be $7,500 in the end of 3 months. And you get your grant, you pay it out, and you go out of business. Heaven forbid, in the worst case scenario. But if that's happening, then essentially what the city's doing with their TRT dollars is essentially redistributing funds to commercial property owners. And I wonder if there's what safeguards could be in place about that, whether it's talking about how you're going to use this money, whether it's doled out over a period of time instead of a lump sum, or like the SBA loans, if it comes with certain strings. The SBA loans were generally limited to various things that you could do. The grant portion was a much smaller piece of that. So just throwing that out, food for thought.
Let's see. Councilor Casper?
Yeah, hasn't the governor stated that there can't be evictions, like Dave, you're mentioning commercial property, if they pay a portion of it? So even if they had to pay something each month as opposed to paying back rent, would that suffice?
Judy, that was Dave's point, that you can't evict, but they still run up the bill. And so if a business is going out of business because they just can't survive this crisis, we could give them $5,000 and it goes into the pocket of the property owner and doesn't really help the business. So that was his concern there.
Councilor Hoagland?
Okay, so fortunately, we're not the only city, right? Seaside did this. As Seaside has a two-part thing. They have a tourism relief program and a one-time hotel and lodging partner. So I would love to see us reach out to Seaside to say, hey, guess what? We want to do the same thing. And theirs is a emergency grant process for non-lodging businesses that covers part of their tourism relief program, right? It's right on their website. It's all can be done online. And there's a whole thing of who's eligible, application process, all of that. And then a separate one for short-term rentals, because as we know, our tourism is very, important to our economy. And so are you going to have short-term rental homeowners saying, well, this is my business. We had, years ago, well, this is my second home. Now they're going to be coming, oh, this is my business, and I need help to recover my business when it's their home. And so there's going to be a difference between that as well. Even if whether it's VR zoning or residential 1.5, is these people are operating businesses in residential places. And so that's not typically a business, a brick and mortar business. And so we need to be able to define the differences between short-term rental relief, if we're going to do that, and businesses. And so they have a two-part process in that city.
Okay. So let's see.
I've got Seaside's grant right here, their criteria. So it includes emergency grants may be used to keep employees on payroll, pay for sick leave, pay business obligations, including debt, rent, and mortgage payments. Eligible applicants include, but are not limited to, non-lodging businesses such as restaurants, shops, galleries, cafes, and entertainment establishments who have been in operation for at least 1 year as of April 1st, 2020. Key qualifying factors will also include holding a business license with the city of Seaside. So that's their criteria.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me ask another question. Should there be a limit, a dollar limit?
I think $5,000 would be a good limit. Theirs is Seaside's is $4,000.
That would be 100 businesses that could be helped at 5,000.
Yep.
Do I have 4? Do I have 6? Do I have 5,001? I feel like an auctioneer. Is everybody generally okay with a $5,000 amount?
I think this needs a little bit more than one meeting to determine the process and the dollar.
Well, that actually will become the city council's decision, because you'll end up if this group says $5,000, then it'll become a matter of the city council saying it's 500,000, it's 600,000, it's 200,000, it's $1 million, whatever amount, and that will then determine how many businesses could actually be helped by that. So the total amount Right now, the only number that we've been working off is $500,000, but that's really going to be up to the city council to make that decision. And they'll have to weigh that against existing costs for the city, future budgets, what projects are cut, delayed, that kind of stuff. So, okay. So,
I guess the question I have there is, I mean, if we came up with a $5,000 number, that's going to have different impact depending on the size of your business. If you're one of the larger restaurants in town with tons of employees versus a mom and pop place, you know, $5,000 isn't going to go as far for the bigger place. So how do we juggle that equation? I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is up to $5,000 depending upon the qualifiers that we put into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then they would need to prove how much they would need or how much they're asking for?
No, it's not prove how much they need. It's going to be based more on the qualifiers that you guys are going through now become weighted in some way.
Are you suggesting that the number isn't $5,000, that it's somewhere between 0 and 5,000 for every applicant?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Okay. A couple of things that stick out in my mind when I look at examples like Seaside. The specific nature of it, I guess what I'm saying is I like, if it's $5,000, I'm going for the $5,000 grant. And I think that it'd be very hard to find a micro enterprise, i.e. 5 or fewer employees, which is the vast majority of Lincoln City businesses, brick and mortar or otherwise, who hasn't been impacted and who wouldn't be able to use more than $5,000. So I think that that's a fair figure. Okay. What's great about the Seaside program that the SBA frankly didn't deliver in any way is the applications are up on the 14th of April. You have to turn them in by the 20th of April, and you get word in the first week of May. End of story. There's 3 dates there, and you're just boom, boom, boom. And you have to live up to that, which means there's a lot of reviewing and issuing and writing of checks in that 10-day period. But if you deliver on that, you win. Because I know that what Lori's heard is what we're hearing, which is frustration that things change. There's all these moving rules, and just to say this is yardstick A and this is when you get a decision means so much. Frankly, I think it means more than the amount wherever that lands.
So one of the things you'd be looking at is two parts. First, do you qualify for it? Whatever we come up with, those are the qualifications to receive it. It's also going to have to become a first come, first serve. No matter what dollar amount you put it on, there's going to be more requests than the dollar amount. So it would end up having to become a first come, first serve. Does anybody see any way out of that?
No, and I think that's fine to be a first come, first serve. The ones that need it the most are looking in every corner to find money and trying to apply right now. So yeah, they're used to that. And when the money's gone, it's gone.
So Tony, I know you're listening in on this and not commenting. You'll have to help us figure out how do we make sure that however the application process comes in, we're able to say track the order in which things come in. Okay, so here's what I've heard so far on this. No national chains. The business can have been closed. It can have remained open. It's just impacted by this emergency. We've got have a physical storefront. There's some limitation on the number of employees, although we haven't identified how large that would be. There would be there would be in the application something to show how the money is going to be used. I've got I'm not sure where we fell out on this, but the part I'm going to put is not for rent, but to be used for other operational costs. And then look at Seasides, which we'll do, and then $5,000 is the amount that we would be offering any one business that succeeds in its application, and then build the time frame in it, which will be very short. I'm looking at council approves this on the 27th. We're all set and done by the 15th of May. So very short turnaround to get things out to people. So that's what I'm hearing. Where am I off on that? What is missing? What should be put back in? Let's see, I've got Judy, Riley, and Ed.
Just a thought. What happens if there's a second wave of this virus?
Well, that gets into our budget discussion, which is also happening Monday. We will be going over with the budget committee that when the city council finally approves the budget, that doesn't necessarily mean that the money is available to be spent. The staff is already creating a list of projects or a list of expenses that can just be put on hold until we know for sure where we come out. And on hold for me means through December. So any expenditure that was going to be purchased in between July and December but doesn't need to be purchased would just simply be on hold. That's how we'll deal with it. Not only if we want to make a second wave of this, but probably more importantly is how it continues to affect our own operations.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hoagland?
Yeah, I disagree with it not being able to be used on rent.
Okay. Let's see, Ed?
I have a question on business must be closed. Are we penalizing people who are being entrepreneurial and trying to do things like, I don't know, sell popcorn on the sidewalk in front of the movie theater, or have a drive-through window open and are barely scraping by, but at least they're trying? Are we basically saying, hey, tough darts, you're a little bit active, and we're only going to talk to people who have absolutely shut down?
No, what I heard was that they may or may not be open or closed, but they have to have been impacted by this.
Okay, thanks. That makes a lot more sense.
Councilor Mark?
Yeah, I had the same thought on Ed's comment, and I don't know why we would limit it to no rent. I don't even know how you would manage that, but it could be that's. I mean, Dave had a really good point as far as a business that might be going out of business and money down the tubes, kind of. But it's I don't know that we have any control over that. But my other thought, and maybe this goes to Judy's comment about if the virus comes back, is I'm a little hesitant to say this in a public meeting. I don't know that we're necessarily limited to the 500,000. I think that's a good starting point, but I suspect that through the budget process, budget committee process, and as time goes by, that there is money that could be diverted from other purposes. It's now designated but not being spent for whatever reason. And I think we just keep that in our back pocket, but I wouldn't want to commit to that now. Does that make sense, Ron?
It does. Let's see. Councillor Casper, we're back to you, and then Councillor Hoagland.
That's an error.
Oh, okay. Councillor Hoagland?
I would like to see a separate thing for short-term rentals. If we're going to offer it to all businesses, I don't think they need to be included in lodging facilities. Need to be separate, I think, than businesses. Period.
Any other thoughts on that? You have in town 500 and 500 and some odd short-term rentals, 532. How do they fit into all of this?
Well, that's short-term rental. That's it. I don't know if you go to tripping.com, I don't know if you'll see 500 come up. I think there's a little bit.
We have
there's a little bit more.
We have 532 that have an occupational tax permit.
You go to tripping.com and put Lincoln City and short-term rental, more than 500 will come up.
Well, I might point out that one of the criteria that we haven't talked about, but it actually would most definitely be in this, you have to have an occupational tax permit. If you don't have one, you would not be eligible. But anyway, so there's a lot of them. So what are your thoughts about short-term rentals?
They're the reason why people come here. They're integral into our economy. I mean, they're absolutely needed. And I don't know what a homeowner who hasn't rented their house out, however many days that this particular time is, I don't know the financial impacts of someone's second house not being rented, right?
So let me give you a couple examples. Somebody has their second home, they're renting it as a vacation rental dwelling, they bring in $3,000 a year. Should they be eligible for $5,000?
You have to prove it. So we have to be able to say, you're in, I don't know. I think there's still needs to be a way in which to determine how they're negatively impacted, the community, right? I don't know. I don't see, as soon as the ban gets lifted, I think we're going to get flooded. It's going to coincide with great weather and they're going to come here, period. And, I think this is, maybe Meredith Hospitality Group or Vacasa is going to apply. And so Vacasa isn't going to be eligible. That's a huge percent. So here's what we're trying to do also is help the people living here who are working that aren't working, right? And so how are we going to facilitate financial, benefits to all those short-term rental cleaners? Because Vacasa isn't going to be allowed to do it because they're an international company. So how are they going to be able to be helped, right? I don't know that way,
So, Councilor Hoagland, are you in support then of allowing the individual, not the managing company, but the individual vacation rental dwelling owner to apply?
Well, that's I think there's a difference there with how how are we looking at that? And I would look at maybe Seaside, since they have a separate program. I haven't looked through that, their lodging grant. I know what I read very quickly was that it's a one-time thing, a one-time check cut to them, but I don't know what that is. I don't know if their management companies charge per month. I don't know if they're charging homeowners by percentages, so I'm not too well versed in that.
Lori, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I think we could take care of a lot of this just by putting the employee criteria on there. Because, a big vacation rental company has too many employees, so they wouldn't really qualify anyway. If we kept it, maybe 10 and under employees, then that would flush out all of, I think, the big ones that don't necessarily need it.
Okay.
But then that's Spanish Head is out now, and that's huge. And those are people that have been working there for 30 years. They have very low turnover rate. And so now those employees in Spanish Head isn't eligible. So, it's really tricky.
Well, and hopefully they've been able to apply and hopefully get some of this federal money, because places like that qualify for the federal money.
Okay.
So there's other resources for some of those places that the small ones really don't have an avenue.
So are we trying to mitigate the differences between the good, whatever the number is, and under? We want it to be hyper local, if you will.
The area where I've been coming from on all of this is that what we're trying to do is interject cash into our economy. Okay, so that it's going into our economy.
By way of gift certificates.
Something like that, yeah. Councilor Casper?
I'll take my hand down now. Suppose you talk about lodging, and so what about if we had the individual VRD owners and there was some kind of stipulation that they were open to receiving like workers from hospitals or schools, and if they did that for X amount of months or something, that they could get certain assistance? I mean, I'm trying to get something shared from their lodging when it's not always being rented. I mean, somehow to utilize that time that is empty and somehow attach it to getting assistance. Somebody help me out here. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Ed, your hand's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the idea that we're going to get immediately flooded. We've been tracking intent to travel numbers, and what we seem to be seeing is that some people will be adventurous and go the second they hear that it's okay. Then that's going to be somewhere around 11-12% of the folks out there. Others are going to be more cautious and really aren't going to trust to be able to go for a while. It's like another 20-30%. And then there's another group that are going to wait a longer time just to make sure that the coast is clear. I think we're going to see a gradual ramp up more so than a flood. And that could change as we go along. So, you know, the idea that the second the gates are open, we're going to be up to our ears and people may not hold. The other thing to look at, though, is when you talk to people about where they want to go and when they start traveling again, beach comes up really high, and rural towns where it isn't crowded right now comes up very high, and that's us. So I think we're going to see factors moderated. I don't think we're going to be flooded, but I think we'll be of the first to actually recover.
Councilor Hoagland, your hand is still up. Okay. So let me just summarize where we are. Okay. So I'll work with Ed, and we'll put together. We'll take all of the information that you've given to us. We'll put together both a recommendation for the City Council and an application that can be presented to them on the 27th. I'll do my very best to either get that out to you. Well, I'll get that out to you either today, but more than likely I'll probably get it out to you tomorrow, and then take a look at it, pick it apart, send in any of your comments to me. We need to have this ready to give to the City Council in their packet by next Wednesday. So if you can send me your comments by Monday at 5, then I'll be able to take it and work it over from there based upon what you give me. What I'll look for in your comments is that if you all seem to be centering in on something that you want to change, that's one's easy, we'll make a change to. If there's only one person that's looking at a change on that, I'll just make note of that, and what I'll do is I'll send the council a packet of it with your individual comments if doesn't seem to be a majority on a certain area. Is that fair enough?
So, Ron, I'd just like to question, so are we talking about kind of two different things? Are we still talking gift cards and grant? Or is it just one?
No, we've been using those terms interchangeably, but I'm going to come back to the restrictions that we have on the TRT funds. We are not able to simply give out those funds to businesses that would not be eligible under our own charter, unless we're able to use that as a purchase of a service, a gift card for lack of a better word, and then that becomes a redeemable thing. So we're going to still be working on that so that we can take those TRT funds and spread them as far as we possibly can.
Well, and just a suggestion, my sister sent me, she lives in Tucson, Arizona, and they're doing buy a $25 gift card, get $10 for free. So maybe we could, put it back on them to buy it, and we add additional to that.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Ed, I had the question earlier in some previous session about how do we distribute those cards, but I did have, just a couple random thoughts. The fact that we are restricted to this gift cards, not a grant, actually kind of works in our favor because it gives us a good rationale to the public for why we have to do things a certain way rather than just hand money out. And I think that makes sense. I did have a concern. I like the idea of putting some number on a limit on the number of employees, because frankly, we've got more businesses than we can serve, and we need to find some practical way to limit that. And that makes sense to me. I'm kind of cursed by this ability to see both sides really quickly. And if you're in its Spanish head, or you're a major company in town with a lot more employees, you're paying a lot more in TRT and a lot more in property taxes. And I think they're going to feel slighted, for not getting something back on that. At the same time, I don't know that $5,000 to the in Spanish head isn't going to mean the same thing as $5,000 to Enrique's Taqueria or something. You know what I mean? So it's a really difficult situation, difficult problem. I don't have answers.
Okay. I think I can get you a little bit more information as well. I'll run some more reports to give breakdowns by number of employees that we have. That's some information that's can easily thin out or work through our computer system. And we'll do a little bit more with making sure we have an accurate account on brick and mortar businesses versus non-brick and mortar businesses. Okay, have we done all the let's see, Ed, your hand just went up.
Yeah, the question came up on distribution of the gift cards, and nothing right now is carved in stone, and this just me and my staff kicking around how this could work. I don't think we want to put gift cards and vouchers into people's hands right now, because people being people, they're going to just roll into town and want to redeem them, whether or not it's safe to travel. So our thought was that when we give away a vacation package or an experience or a meal or whatever the contest of the week is, they get a letter saying, congratulations, you won. We look forward to seeing you in Lincoln City when the time is right. When the time is right, you will receive your prize. And we mail things out to them when the time is right. We don't put it into their hands and let them decide when to come down.
Can we sell the gift cards for less than value? You send us $5, you get a $50 gift card?
We're going to be sitting here with $500,000 worth of gift cards. My guess is before it's over, we'll get very creative and figure out a lot of crazy things. I think we all have the same desire, and that's to get cash into people's hands right now. And we're going to move fast, and it's probably going to be messy, and we're probably going to end up with a safe full of stuff that we're not quite sure what we're going to do with, that will eventually work down. But would we do that? Yeah, probably, for some reason somewhere along the line. I'm not going to claim this is totally thought out. I never thought we'd be doing something of this magnitude. But yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe we start putting out BOGOs instead of here's a completely free meal. As we move down the pike and things get better and that type of thing. I mean, some of these will probably be used to host travel writers. Some of them, who knows? But we'll figure a lot of that out on the backside. But the immediate task per Dave Price is to get money where it is needed as quick as we can while staying within the rules. That's the whole game here.
Councilor Hoagland?
Yes, thank you. So I think there's a couple of things. We can have a welcome back to the beach event, we like a kite festival. So welcome back to the beach. And from that moment forward, any gift card is valuable. Sure. Now, that could be, I understand. I think I was in a call with Dave. I can't remember. And we're trying to figure out how to facilitate like a universal gift card that could be used at any of the establishments, separate. And that would only be good after July 1st or whatever it is. And then, so that's going to entice them, but then immediately is the grant program to give them that money. I think we're looking at multiple layers and different ways in which to really facilitate this whole event and saying, hey, I know what you saw on the spray painted on the street, but that's not us, and here is us. And we are saying, welcome back to the beach, and here is this process, because your $5 got you $50 gift card or whatever that ends up being. To the visitors, they're going to come. We need to take care of our businesses and people here that are here. And that's a little bit different. And I understand a way in which to give money to the businesses. The grant process should be able to take that that way. And just like Lori said, if they need money, they're going to come quick. Like Dave said about, it's 3 days and that's it. However that is. And I understand we have council council needs to approve this, but I think we're looking at it a little bit different.
Okay, Councilor Casper.
I know we've been talking about business and the use of the TRT funds, but since we're talking about economic assistance, I put together the needs of the people who are fed. I took Marcy Baker's letter to heart, and one of the things was food and shelter on her list, the very first. And I don't know if this is appropriate to bring here, but if the city has money, would this also be an avenue to give economic assistance to the groups that I've listed in my research?
Yeah, it could.
Is that another venue?
It could. We just wouldn't be able to use the TRT funds for that. But that could be built into the other half of the program we've been talking about. So I got that information. There's a couple of things that came out of this meeting that I'll take those and add those into the other half of this program that we're talking about, which is non-TRT funds.
Okay, so it could fall under that.
Very, very easily.
And we don't have to discuss it in this subcommittee currently?
No, this is the one where the council had instructed the staff to look at the other side of this, which is the non-TRT funds. So I'll take all of that information that we've received, put that together, and so that what you'll be getting are two separate proposals that they're not choose one or the others, but it's looking at both those, then adopting them or modifying and adopting them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, we'll bring this meeting to a close. Like I said, you'll get an email from me probably tomorrow, not today, and I'll have this information. And please look it over, go through it, thoroughly scrutinize it, any comments, and then we can modify it from there so I can give something to the City Council.
Ron, one last question. One of the things that got bantered back and forth that I'm not 100% clear on, we had some folks saying $5,000, that's what you get. We had other folks saying that lesser amounts for smaller businesses might make sense. Are we looking at a tiered program at this point where?
I will send that information to you tomorrow. I don't know for certain. There's some more information that I'm going to have our finance department help me pull up to see how things get affected, and then I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lori.
Bye.